FinTech is the great catalyst for creating a drastically different world. If you take a minute to think, you can see that the future has arrived. Cryptocurrency is changing real-world markets. Peer-to-peer money transfers are happening instantly on our phones. And I can download an app and get my apartment insured before I get through this presentation. FinTech is truly living up to the promise of disrupting markets. This rapid innovation is solving some real problems, all the while creating discrepancies of access for millions of people. Hello everyone, my name is Pablo Martinez and I am joined today by Eric Folkert.
Hello there! We are two of the co-founders for PayTheory, a fintech company on a mission to bring financial inclusivity to a diverse world. We've been working with leading human insights researchers to better understand some of the challenges faced by American families. You see, for tens of millions of people, payments kind of suck. We've unearthed stories that we found from Maggie L. Her high school's daughter's AP classes last year cost between $150 and $200 per semester. In addition, she's paying around $400 a year so her daughter can participate in marching band. She wants to pay it all, but it's too much all at once. And keeping track of these payments on top of everything else is a headache. On the other side of the equation, we're seeing cases of over $100,000 in fees go uncollected.
More personally, I can tell you of times when I've gone to the dentist and the doctor and I've missed a payment because of some technical issues. It's not just the experience of completing a payment that needs to be overhauled. It's everything leading up to it. In my case, an email quickly cleared things up. I had funds set aside, access to online banking tools, and if you're here at FinTech Frontier, you might be in a position where you have those funds available to you too, and have access to digital banking. But let's talk about those that don't. In the US, 20% of Americans don't have any of their annual income saved. Over 40% of the population will have less than $10,000 saved by the time they retire. 2/3 of people would struggle to scrounge up $1,000 in the case of an emergency. And then there's cash. According to the Federal Reserve Bank of San Francisco, cash accounted for 1 in every 5 transactions last year. And that was in the midst of a pandemic that forced everybody inside for most of the year.
The system that exists now isn't made to include all. It favors those on the higher end of the socioeconomic spectrum. Over the past 15 years, companies have been racing to solve problems that turn quick profits, focusing their services towards businesses and individuals that have money. In recent years, there's been a push for inclusivity and to help those on the lower end of the socioeconomic spectrum through fintech. However, these solutions often have a difficult time turning a profit or do not actually help these individuals. We have figured out how to service the entire socioeconomic spectrum, and it all starts with families. That's where PayTheory comes in. PayTheory is a fintech tool that takes a uniquely holistic and inclusive approach to payments. The key is unifying the payments experience. In order to effectively unify payments, we need to serve the 3 main parties involved in payments: families, SaaS platforms, and service providers. Families interact with vital service providers like their schools, daycare, sports, extracurricular, healthcare, amongst others. These service providers utilize SaaS tools to deliver these services. For example, a service provider like a school will use a SaaS platform like a student registration tool. They will also use a separate platform to handle school lunches. On top of that, there is yet another tool that the school uses for ticketing in athletics and for the arts. A school district will have over 100 of these tools that a family could potentially interact with and over a dozen different payment point of contacts. It gets overwhelming quickly.
The existing ecosystem is made up of hundreds of isolated experiences. That's the real impact of PayTheory's holistic approach. It's about being intentional about solving complex problems. It's about empowering schools to allow parents to pay online with card, ACH, or physical cash, while PayTheory shifts the burden of liability onto a network of over 55,000 retail partners across the country through our remote cash payments. It's about empowering healthcare workers to reduce the barrier to care by making expenses more manageable through buy now, pay later plans. Or maybe more accurately said, access now, pay later plans. It's about unifying a fragmented must-pay experience that families deal with into one single, simple experience.
We have a great team made up of fintech, edtech, and health tech experts. We're going after interconnected verticals that have incredible market potential. It's been less than a year since we've launched customer number 1, but since that time, we've been seeing PayTheory fully integrated into registration, forms, and interoperability tools in the world of edtech. We've also begun that process with players in the pharmaceutical space, major hospitals, child sports, and others. We're reshaping the potential of fintech to be inclusive, and we're doing it right here in Cincinnati.
Okay, joining us today is the technical mind behind it all, co-founder and CTO Eric Folkert from Pay Theory. Judges, take it away.
So Eric, thanks for joining us today. Where are you going to concentrate? That's a pretty broad spectrum to be able to go after in terms of distribution. So needless to say, you're going to have to kind of keep building one sector and then learn from that and do the next. That's my assumption, but maybe I'm wrong.
So our focus is anywhere families have to pay payments, and so there's you started to bleed across some of these things. And so like today, we've started out with schools because that's where families are at, and the healthcare sector we've actually found has been more receptive than the ed tech sector. So like right now we're in talks with 3 different telemedicine companies, a healthcare network, a couple other groups, because they have this missing third of the market. 1/3 of American families are under and unbanked, and so as we go out there and actually show them they have this missing problem, they've been pretty excited to talk to us. So the good news also is our technology is pretty universal. We integrate right now at the checkout, and so they already have the system. So it's an idea of, do you use something like a Stripe or do you use Pay Theory? So we don't have to get very specific in a vertical.
Eric, I'll ask a quick question. Could you share, if I'm trying to pay for my kids' lunches with cash, could you kind of walk me through what that process would look like?
So obviously the first side is that you give the kid the money and they could potentially take it to school. The second way that you would use that is in Pay Theory. If the lunch provider is enabled, you would go online, you would go to checkout, but instead of using a credit card or e-check, you would go through and choose cash. You get a one-dimensional barcode that you would take to Family Dollar, Dollar General, CVS, Walgreens. You go to the checkout, you scan it at the checkout, it says $20, you give them the $20. By the time the cash drawer closes, it's reconciled in the back end. So online forms no longer become a point of discrimination. So that way you're already at these locations. You can go ahead and do it. If you're a cash family, you're there doing these things. And so it kind of makes it a simple step instead of all those other steps you have to take normally.
So you mentioned that the integration's at the payment. Who's responsible for that integration? How difficult is that integration? Is it low code, no code? Walk us through, and who's responsible for doing it?
If I said anything involving no code, my developers would come in here and murder me. So now most of our partners, it takes about a week to maybe 2 weeks. So we have a local partner here, Abre, who's another Cincinnati startup. And it took them about a week to do the integration. So.
All right. Ron, do you have a question to close us out?
Just real quick question. You said ed tech is your space right now. Thinking about the growth of that sector, I mean, I know how slow educational sector could be. How long did it take to get into that space, and how quickly do you think you're going to scale that across the sector?
Great question. So the actual school-based stuff is very, we call it lumpy. You get a lot of stuff at the beginning of the school year, but there's a lot of things that go on all year round. So sports activities, childcare, things like that. And so it's not very difficult for us to go in because we don't have to be part of the bidding process for education. So as I like to say, we're the mustard. The Abre, for example, is the hot dog. The school buys the hot dog. What are you going to have in the hot dog? It's Pay Theory. And so we go through and do that. And so it makes our sales cycle a lot easier. So.